Hi, I'm Paul Stringfellow, Technical Director here at Gardner Systems. Welcome to this short video that we're doing where we want to kind of talk about one of the main issues that we see our customer base talking to us about. And I'm sure it's a significant issue for anybody watching this video. And that is the increasing threat posed by cybersecurity. If we look at just standard research that's out there in the marketplace at the moment, we're seeing reports of things like 93% year-on-year increase in cyber attacks. We're seeing figures from IDC recently about 93% of organizations have had some kind of cyber attack. 50% of organizations have experienced a non-recoverable data event, and 13% of organizations who've suffered a ransomware attack were able to avoid paying a ransom, which means 87% of people had to pay some kind of ransom. And these are big and frightening numbers. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is a real shift in the complexity of the challenge and the complexity of trying to deal with the challenge. So what we thought we'd do is we'd have kind of this little 15 minutes or so just to share some of our experiences of what we're seeing in the marketplace, what we're seeing, the threats as our customers are reporting them to us, and what we're seeing in terms of vendor technology that's helping to solve some of these problems. So joining me to discuss this, I've got with us Frank Coward, Gardner's chief exec, and Jason Fitzgerald, one of our leading technical consultants. So gentlemen, afternoon and welcome to this video. And I'll start with you, Frank. What's the kind of things that you're seeing from our customers? What are the kind of things that they're saying to you when it comes to security?
Well, from the very largest to the smallest, and as you know, we cover quite a spectrum of different sizes and different technical abilities within our portfolio. But without a shadow of a doubt, every single one of them is under enormous threat. And I think those responsible for the technology, and indeed those within the business now, are more and more concerned about what they read, because for them it's quite frightening. If you're a non-technical business leader and you read this, you're thinking, well, I don't really have an awful lot of control over this, but what I read is quite troubling. And I think if you're the technical person, you're thinking, as you said earlier, my technical resources in terms of both the skills ability of them. Most people in IT were not trained as IT security specialists. They have developed those skills to some greater or lesser extent. But of course, the problem for a lot of them is those skills just aren't big enough, aren't great enough, aren't extensive enough. So I think, especially now that we've come out of, or trying to come out of lockdown, there's still an awful lot of people working from home. That threat envelope is getting worse. I think people's anxiety about what they do about this and what the next steps are just growing.
I think there's a couple of really good points in there. And actually, before we started recording this, I was just reading an article regarding a big cyber incident here in the UK over the weekend. So, well-known supermarket saw a lot of their services and systems taken down over the weekend. And one comment that I read, and it really stuck with me as part of the commentary on it, was about how the threat has changed so much. So this kind of real shift in distributed working. And they actually used a phrase in there about how employees are now more responsible than ever for security inside of an organization. And I think that's quite an interesting, that presents quite a kind of an interesting conundrum, but it also highlights just how complex this problem has become. It's this idea that we are more distributed than ever. We've got services in data centers, in the public cloud, with third-party organizations, software as a service offerings. We've got critical business data on multiple endpoints of, that can include really powerful mobile phones and laptops, and the complexity of the threat is kind of only matched by the complexity of those carrying out the threats. It's that idea that we talked before, about some of those figures that we've seen. That and some other figures that we've seen shared with us recently. 33% of large businesses feeling their staff are overwhelmed by the security challenge. 53%, as something you talked about before, Frank, reporting this kind of problematic shortage of skills. It's a real huge challenge. I mean, Jason, you've seen the same kind of stuff when you're talking to people, because so you're talking to them from a kind of a technical level. Are you seeing similar challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the growth in a number and the complexity of cyber threats is just increasing. We've seen that dramatically over the past couple of years. We're seeing that IT budgets and resource isn't necessarily in line with that. which results in IT teams just being stretched because not only are they providing IT infrastructure and support services to end users, but they're expected to provide a comprehensive protection policy too, around cybersecurity. Within our within our customer base, we're actually seeing varying degrees of this. So some are quite fortunate to have a dedicated IT security team, so they have the resource to adequately monitor and protect the environment. But not all customers are that fortunate. Some have got smaller IT teams with more general roles, and they're responsible for, as I said, securing the infrastructure, ensuring it's online, but supporting end users as well. And they don't necessarily have the time to monitor that environment to the extent that is needed to detect these more enhanced threats. And so the IT teams need to be more effective with the way in which they're monitoring the environment, and be able to act upon the information that they're seeing in a more targeted manner. So, we're seeing varying degrees of success, I would say, with tackling the current cybersecurity challenge within our customer base.
I think a lot of this comes down to I think what this comes down to is what is a reasonable expectation. And to me, it would be unreasonable to expect everybody within an organization to be trained to a level where they're never going to make a mistake. My reasonable expectation would be that this threat envelope is just going to get more complex and more far-reaching. I can expect that. I can anticipate that. And even if I have an organization that has a really gifted and talented security officer, how is that person supposed to stop anybody in that organization making a critical error which is outside of their knowledge or their experience if we don't equip the overall estate with a means of that person to manage it?
Yeah, and I think, and something as Jason was talking before, and I think you've highlighted it well there, is, the complexity is not, it's not just driven by, in fact, it probably isn't driven by a lack of technology. I think one of the things that we're seeing is that many of the people we're dealing with have got technology coming out their ears almost to deal with the threat. The problem is, now you said, Frank, there actually, that it doesn't matter how skilled they are. There's only so much as a human being that we can kind of keep on top of. We've got all of this kind of, while I talked earlier on about this kind of disparate technology infrastructure that we've got now, disparate users, data in multiple locations, applications delivered from different locations. We've also got tools all over the place, and all those tools reporting threats and possible incidents and reporting those to this kind of overstretched security operations team who are probably, Jace, as you said before, probably running around doing a bunch of other things as well. They're maybe not, some of our customers do have dedicated SecOps teams, but not very many of them, so they tend to be security operations, but they're also doing backup operations, and they're also dealing with the service desk, and they're also making stuff work and deploying new projects. And this kind of whole thing is massively overwhelming for them. So I mean, while we're painting quite a dark picture here of the threat, I think it's important that people appreciate that this threat is real. That I think one of the biggest challenges that I see when we're talking to businesses, and I think we've all had incidents of this, is where that organization doesn't believe they're under threat. Nobody's going to be interested in my data. Why would anybody want to come and attack me? And I think it's important that people realize that this kind of spray attack, as the industry calls it, is very much alive and well. Whether that's done through a phishing email or some malicious code. That idea that I'm just going to target lots and lots of people and hope for the best, that's because it's worthwhile. So I think it's important people realize they are absolutely at threat. But I suppose one of the big challenges, though, is how then as an industry are we starting to deal with this problem where we've got then all of these tools available to us, probably scattered across an organization, all reporting different kind of threats. What are the kind of steps we're seeing? What are we seeing in the technology industry? Maybe you, Jace, actually. What are we seeing in the technology industry that is starting to find ways of overcoming this kind of huge sprawl of information and different software that might be trying to help?
Yeah, so a key part of determining what is going on in the environment is logging and metrics. So logging and metrics. So how do we capture what is happening in the environment? So with existing platforms, that might be through firewall logs. could be through server logs or even endpoint logs. And all of that needs to be ingested and stored somewhere. So, we're seeing a lot of SIEM systems being deployed. But we're seeing that kind of goes hand in hand with kind of someone being dedicated to manage that SIEM, and actively monitor it for threats, know what they're looking for, and be able to raise it to the business in such a way that makes sense to them. So I've seen this kind of threat within the logs, and it could be hundreds or thousands of logs. So it is difficult to sift through and actually understand what's happening. And you touched earlier on around the working from home challenge. That in itself is a different challenge because it is now more difficult to determine if actually you're under attack to begin with, because we've got this separated workforce. How do we use existing logging to determine if a workstation out in the field, for example, is under attack? Well, if we're looking at on-premises servers, for example, and firewall logs, but we may not have visibility to that. And then we tie that into the already stretched IT team. How can we possibly manage this? It's great having all of those logs and metrics to refer to, but actually, if there's no one there that can interpret what that means, or actually have the resource, the time to be able to sift through that in itself is a different challenge, because now we've got the logs, but actually can't adequately act upon them. One of the partners that we've recently started to work with is Secureworks. What Secureworks does is kind of ingests all of that information. So it'll take existing log files, so from infrastructure components, servers, firewalls, but also endpoint metrics to be able to visualize this data in a meaningful way to IT teams. So essentially what that means is that IT personnel are now given the ability to actually look at the dashboard and see information that is directly relevant to their infrastructure in real time. So it gives them the ability to then start to really target their efforts around not only understanding what is going on, but actively tackling it as well.
So that raises a question then. One of the things that we see this problem all over the place, don't we? This kind of big data problem that we are collecting lots and lots of data, and then we're trying to do stuff with it. And I suppose you can certainly see, and it's interesting you mentioned Secureworks. You say kind of a relatively new partner to us here at Gardner's. So if we take those as the example, that while they ingest all of this information, then are they offering anything on top of that? Are they doing anything that can help us to prioritize potential security threat, maybe automate the way of dealing with it, so we can quickly mitigate that risk, because I think ultimately they're the things we need. I think while bringing it together is one thing, some kind of, ultimately I think the overstretched security ops person or the overstretched service desk person needs more than that. They need more than it just aggregating together. I think they need some help. Is that either of you maybe? Is that something Secureworks are bringing to this kind of security party?
Well, Secureworks have the 4 basic pillars, don't they? Which is to prevent, to detect, to investigate, and to respond. And that's what we all want. I think, in a separate conversation this morning, Paul, we were talking about on your mobile phone, you only want a one-stop shop that looks after your phone and its security. You don't want to be making manual adjustments as you go along or looking into individual aspects of the phone. You just want something that protects the phone. And that really surely has got to be the nirvana for people who want to protect their business, their infrastructure, their overall estate, and move to that. And of course, Secureworks allows you to do that because it can take you anywhere on the spectrum from I have no security response to I am completely covered with a 724 monitoring and an extended scanning principle that actually is looking up the pipe to see what might be coming down it. Sorry, so even in the last 3 weeks, we've seen inquiries led by in the US Senate, in US Congress, and we've had in the United Kingdom, Commons select committees complaining about the activities of social media companies. And what people don't seem to appreciate is that means that anybody can glean information around personalities, individuals, groups of individuals within enterprises, shape attacks more adequately, that mean that it becomes a lot more difficult to discern what is not somebody from within your group of friends or business colleagues and somebody who actually represents a significant threat. So the threat is actually growing exponentially, and something like Secureworks enables us to take them from dealing with probably very little estate into something which is monitored full time for them by experts who are actually anticipating threats as they emerge. And I think even the best of the security specialists engaged by some of the larger corporates would find it really difficult to do that without advice from specialists in this field.
Yeah, and just to touch on that from a technical perspective, essentially what Secureworks are doing is they're using some elements of AI to understand what is relevant to that customer and expose that information directly to the IT team. So what that means is that the IT team are now spending less time sifting through the relevant information. It's up front, it's in the middle of the screen for them to act upon. So it's making meaningful sense of all of that log data, and as the infrastructure grows, the amount of logging increases dramatically. And so having that boil down of information to just show me what's relevant to me is really important to do. Essentially, it means that IT teams are now able to spend their time more effectively dealing with issues, but the Secureworks team will provide resource as well. So right from the dashboard, we can contact a security professional, so someone whose job it is to understand emerging threats, be able to assist customers with them. So they can work in tandem with your existing IT team, or as Frank's mentioned there, you can actually escalate the service up to the managed XDR service, which is where Secureworks will actually monitor your environment 24/7 for you and be able to act upon any security incidents arise. So this kind of tackles the resource issue of, as the environment gets bigger or as the IT team are struggling with the events, can we have that dedicated resource that is a professional in this space? Yes, is the answer, and it's quite easy to consume as well. What's great about this is that it also provides an element of incident response as well. So if the organization is under attack, Secureworks will not only raise that to the business to inform us to exactly what's going on, but they'll dedicate resource to help you not only understand what's happening, but remediate the issue and proactively put in steps to stop it from happening again. So that's great when we look at the challenge of the stretched IT team, because it's a professional resource that's easy to consume.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there. And I was, again, I mentioned a presentation I saw a couple of days back where IDC were presenting and sharing some information. One of the things that was interesting about what they covered was the way they're seeing the as a service market growing. And I think for us as as a consultancy business that works with customers of all kinds of types, I think we're seeing that as well. We're seeing. I mean, myself and Frank, we've had conversations with different customers over the last few weeks alone, where in all cases, IT is being challenged by their chief exec, by their leadership to how much stuff is it that you're doing day to day? Can you give to somebody else so that we can have you focus on the true business value stuff? Take the expertise, the stuff about our business and work with that. Let's kind of pass off some of this stuff that either we don't have the specialism for internally, or we just don't have the resource for internally. Can we use our existing partners to do this? And I think what's interesting about all of this kind of stuff, for us as Gardner Systems, our role when it comes to security, our role is to kind of work within that NIST cybersecurity framework to help our customers to identify, protect, detect, respond, recover to the cybersecurity threat, to threats placed on their data. And our ability, to be able to work with our customers and identify tools like Secureworks as helping them to address that problem is really important for us to be able to do that, to listen to what customers want and to be able to find out what the industry is doing and identify vendors like Secureworks. And I think just before we wrap up here, and it may be interesting, Frank, for people who are kind of joining into this, often we'll get asked about, as gardeners, how do we go around selecting vendors that we want to work with, and I've just kind of touched on some things. We have customers come to us with business problems, and we find vendors who can help from a technology perspective in dealing with that. But are there other things as gardeners that we look for in vendors that Secureworks kind of ticks those boxes for us?
Oh, absolutely. I think, a pedigree is so important, and Secureworks has been around for a very long time. Has started this aspect of their business over 20 years now. I think the other thing, they're so willing to work with both us and our clients. And I have not yet experienced that which you do experience from some vendors, which is take it or leave it. The thing I really like about Secureworks is the fact that it's so flexible, so pliable, so easy to put together a bespoke solution for somebody. From the plethora of solutions and services they've got, they're happy to knit something together that says, we put this together with you in mind, and we're happy to talk to you about it, advise you on it. And of course, you pay accordingly, because what they're not doing is saying, oh, by the way, this is a very expensive solution and you have to buy the whole 9 yards. It's not. It's actually something which is tailored around your requirements, both to your security needs and to your pocket. So yes, all those things matter to me, which is to say, we've listened to the customers, and we've thought about their needs, and we've come up with something which will take them from where in some cases people have got very little resistance to security challenges to something which is completely outsourced and secured by security professionals 7/24. And I think ultimately that's probably where the market will go. But this is a means to take our customers wherever they are on that spectrum from one end to the other.
Yeah, and I think I think often we'll get asked, don't we, as a business, what is it that you guys actually do? And I think what you've just talked about there sums up exactly what we're here for. We're working with businesses. They have business problems, and often those problems manifest themselves as technology problems as well. They have business problems, but they often don't. Jason talked earlier on about kind of the resource for dealing with the cybersecurity threat, and often they don't have the resource internally to be able to go out and look at the market, which is basically our job, between
Mm-hmm.
helping our customers solve their problems and seeing what technology is available to help do that. And as you said, Frank, we kind of have these things we look for. Have they been around a while? Is the technology rock solid? Are they proactive in working with us, working with our customers, and listening to try and solve problems? So I think these guys are a real good fit for what we're looking to do. And I think certainly if you're watching this as one of our customers, and cybersecurity, and I'm sure it is really high up on your list, but you are concerned about how you deal with these ever evolving and changing threats, and how you respond to them, um, you know, please do come and talk to us. You can reach us via all the normal channels. You can good old phone call. You can contact us all via email. You'll find us all on social media, on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So please contact us if you've got any questions. Do come to us, and I'm sure we'll be able to help you to find a solution. But for now, I hope you found this valuable. I hope you found this interesting. Frank, Jason, thanks for your input and your wise words there.
Okay.
And we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.